Good morning. We have been seeing the towns and townships forming cities. Once they start growing, then start each growth of any town results in element of decay too. So the formation of slums is one of the major results of over urbanization. Actually, it is a scientific urban rural divide with the buffer known as the green belt. And if we are in a position to maintain the green belt and the rural occupation with their standard of living enriched and the encroachment of this urbanization towards the rural area is restricted, then a balance can be achieved by which the formation of slums can be avoided. Town planning depends on various factors we are seeing, such as the history, the region, even the religion, to a great extent the political hierarchy, the social network, the educational level of the people, and the occupation and the characteristics of the inhabitants. So each town in each nation will have its own character. Each town will have a character of its own. And that character is the way in which the town is planned and assembled. Components, as you have seen, zones, how the zones are assembled decides the character of the town. And assembly of any components is known as architecture. Architecture is a very general term, even though it has been initially used for a builder or a constructor or a chief creator. Architect. It's a Greek word, architekon. From that, it is a builder who does civil engineering practice. It was initially like that. Then, when the horizon of architecture spread more, it has become a specialized field branched out from civil engineering. Now you have courses on architecture, dedicated courses on Bachelor of Architecture, Master of Architecture. You have classic architecture, vernacular architecture, traditional architecture, modern architecture, and contemporary architecture too. Each nation will have a particular type of architecture suiting their geography, terrain, and the taste of the people, and the topography as well as the land availability, along with the density of population. Greeks and Romans, they play a very important role from the inception of architecture, and you can see the imprint of architectural marvels in Greek architecture and Roman architecture. Similarly, in India, the civilization, Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, the Sindhu civilization, they have a lot of architecture which the archaeological department has preserved. Similarly, the British architecture, English architecture, European architecture, American architecture, the world of Paris, the style of architecture from each country. In India itself, according to the region, the South Indian architecture, temple architecture. In North, you see another version of architecture. So in same country, according to the region, the architecture differs. And those architecture are nothing but the assembly of components. The basic elements of any architecture. You have seen variety of architecture in different nations, but the basic elements used to evolve this architecture, the architectural elements are the same. Only thing how these elements have been incorporated in the design. The basic first element in architecture is called a point. Point is a dimensionless element. It is multi-directional and it doesn't have thickness, it doesn't have length or width. It's a point, just like a dot. Even though mathematically a dot has dimensions, but comparing to its governing environment, that dot dimension is insignificant. That is what we have to understand, because nothing can exist without dimension. So an engineer designs everything with shape, form and dimensions. So, but basically architectural definition of a point is, it is universally direction. In all direction, point can radiate, but it doesn't have a dimension. Examples of point in architecture are nothing but the point, the apex point of a dome. If you have a dome, there will be an apex point, and that point is called a dome. If people using costumes, they just put something on their forehead, either red in color or black in color, with a greater circle or a smaller circle, or even just a dot. They are all examples of points. If you just take the coconut tree, the coconuts are acting as points. That's what we have to understand. Comparing to the dimensions of the coconut, what is the point element there is nothing but the coconut. So first we told that point doesn't have dimensions. So coconut obviously has dimensions. That is the thing. Here, so many clauses, CLAUSC, are subjective. And we have to interpret things as you interpret things in classic literature. When you start comparing the Shakespearean acts or just writings of a novelist, the interpretations have to be in such a way that suits to the environment. There will be some ornamentation to the facts. And this ornamentation plays a very important role in architecture. ultimately what you get as the outcome, the external feeling which a viewer gets from a particular creation, that is the result of a good architecture, for which the elements an architect uses, one is the point, second is a line. Second is a line. Line is defined as a linear element connecting 2 points. Line is defined as a linear element connecting 2 points. Or in other words, line is nothing but infinitely arranged points, one touching the other with infinitesimally small dimension. A series of points connected together with infinitesimally small objects. That's a line. So point, line. Line has one dimension. Line has one dimension either in the x direction or in the y direction or in the z direction. These are the axes on which an architect evolves a form: x, y, and z. So first element, no dimension. Second, a linear element has dimension, one dimension. Obviously, the third element is nothing but a planar element. Planar element. So it will have either x and y plane, or it will have x and z plane, or y and z plane. A rectangle. We have to tell an example for linear element. Qutub Minar in India. Qutub Minar, the height is considerable compared to its lateral dimensions. So an example for a linear element is Qutub Minar. Eiffel Tower of Paris, if you just see the top portion, the upper portion of the Eiffel Tower of Paris is converging towards a linear element. Now a wall of a residence is nothing but a planar element. The wall of China, it's a planar element. Then XYZ, the third, the form, solid. So point, line, plane, solid. Solid will have x, so plane will have 2 dimensions. So the third dimension, even though it may exist in architecture, it will be considerably small compared to the other 2 dimensions. In linear element also there will be some width and depth, but those will be very less compared to its. The larger dimension will mask or dominate the other 2 dimensions. In form, it is not so. All the 3 dimensions will start competing each other. All will be proportional to each other, or even if they are not proportional, they will start competing with each other. The existence and significance, relevance, importance of all dimensions are equally taken care of. So the term in architecture is the competition of elements. In point, there is no element to compete each other. Point will compete by itself. In linear element, the larger dimension will compete with the other 2 dimensions. In a planar element, these 2 dimensions will start competing with the third dimension. In a solid or a form, and architectural slogan is form follows function. Form follows function. That is the modern architectural slogan. Any form follows its function. You can quote so many examples for forms. All existence of solids are forms. In architecture, a solid need not be literally a solid, having matter inside. If you see outside, for example, a room you have four walls and you have an open space inside. Open space in the sense, space without any objects. You get an enclosure by having four walls. That is called a solid. A room is called a solid, but geometrically or mathematically we cannot agree because there is a void. It is not only solid, there is some void in between. So these are the four elements in architecture. I don't know, in the start I had told you three elements. If I told like that, it is wrong. It is four elements: point, line, plane, and solid. And architects work with these four elements: point, line, plane, and solids, and evolves different forms to follow a particular function using a lot of creative principles in architecture. Let us see what creative principles in architecture tomorrow by God's grace. Thank you.